Hi, this is Blake.
Hi, this is Cameron. We welcome you to yet another episode of Trust Talks. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into acceptable use policies. You know, those rules that kind of govern how we're all using technology at work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know, it doesn't exactly sound like the most exciting topic, right? But trust me on this one. There's actually a lot of really interesting stuff to uncover here. We're going to be looking at an article from the TrustCloud GRC Launchpad.
Okay.
It's called Acceptable Use Policy, 5 Common Mistakes to Avoid When Implementing AUP. And I got to tell you, when I was reading this thing, I was kind of surprised by some of the mistakes that businesses are making.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. A lot of companies, they kind of trip up on some of these things that seem really simple, and it can actually, cause some pretty big problems for them. Think security breaches, legal issues, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, no one wants that. So let's jump right into mistake number 1, huh?
Sounds good.
A lot of companies, they write these AUPs in language that's like so confusing and complicated. It's like almost impossible to understand.
It's true. It's like they expect everyone to just inherently know all the rules, but it doesn't really work that way, does it?
No, not at all. The article even pointed out that some of these policies are so vague that they don't even specify what's considered appropriate online content.
Yeah, and that's where you run into trouble. Because
right.
if people don't know what the rules are, then, well, how can they follow them, right?
Right. And that leads us right into mistake number 2, not updating the policy often enough. And, I was really shocked to learn that some companies are still using policies that are, ancient. I'm talking, from the Stone Age of technology.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Because technology moves so fast these days that if you're not keeping your policies up to date, you're really leaving yourself open to all sorts of risks.
It's like trying to drive a car using a map from 100 years ago.
Exactly. You're going to get lost.
Yeah.
And in this case, getting lost could mean, falling victim to some new cybersecurity threat.
So you're saying that having an outdated AUP is kind of like leaving your front door wide open for hackers to just walk right in.
Pretty much, yeah.
And nobody wants that. So what's mistake number 3?
All right, so this one's a big one. It's the lack of education and training for employees.
Oh, yeah. You can't just hand somebody a huge document and expect them to become an instant expert, right?
Exactly. People need training. They need to understand the policy. They need to know how to apply it in real life situations. And honestly, they need to feel comfortable asking questions if they're not sure about something.
Makes sense. I remember when I started a new job a while back, the AUP they gave me was this massive thing. I mean, it was like reading a phone book. I just skimmed it and hoped for the best.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if people are intimidated by the policy or if they don't understand it, they're less likely to actually follow it, right?
Right. So what you're saying is we need to make these policies more accessible, easier to understand.
Exactly. We need to make sure that people actually know what's expected of them and that they have the resources they need to stay safe and secure online.
Okay, so we've talked about 3 mistakes so far. What's the next one on the list?
Number 4 is inconsistent enforcement. This one's a big one because it can really erode trust.
Inconsistent enforcement. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, it means that the rules are only enforced sometimes or only for certain people. And that's just not fair. It creates confusion and resentment.
Yeah, that makes sense. If the rules aren't applied consistently, then people start to think that they don't really matter.
Exactly. And then they're less likely to follow them. And the whole point of having a policy is to keep everyone safe, right?
Right. Okay, so inconsistent enforcement is definitely a no-no. What's the final mistake on our list?
The 5th mistake is failing to address those new technologies and trends that are always popping up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Technology changes so quickly these days, it's hard to keep up.
It is. And a lot of companies struggle to keep their policies in sync with all the latest innovations. They might have really detailed guidelines for using email, but what about all those new collaboration platforms that everyone's using now? Those.
You mean like Slack and Microsoft Teams and all that?
Exactly. What about those? Are those covered in the policy?
Good point. And then there's remote work, too. Are companies addressing the security challenges that come with people working from home? I mean, a lot of people are working from their couch or, a coffee shop these days.
Yeah, exactly. So the point is, a policy that's stuck in the past is practically useless in today's world. It needs to be a living document, something that's constantly evolving to address the latest threats and technologies.
Okay, so we've talked about the 5 common mistakes that companies make with their AUPs, but why is this important for our listeners? Why should they care about all of this?
Well, because at the end of the day, AUPs are really about creating a safer, more productive, and ultimately more enjoyable digital environment for everyone.
I like that. So it's not just about restricting what people can and can't do online.
Right. It's about empowering people to use technology responsibly
Yeah.
and making sure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to online safety and security.
I like that. So it's about creating a culture of awareness and responsibility, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, that's a great place to wrap up part 1 of our deep dive into acceptable use policies. We'll be back in a bit to talk more about what should actually be included in these policies. So stay tuned.
See you soon. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're ready for more AUP action.
Oh, absolutely. I'm ready to dive deeper. In the last part, we talked about, those common AUP mistakes. But now I want to know, what does a really good AUP actually look like? What are the essential ingredients?
Okay, well, first and foremost, a good AUP, it needs to clearly spell out what's considered acceptable use of all those company resources. We're talking computers, smartphones, internet access, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Okay. So, what kind of specific examples are we talking here?
Sure. I mean, it might say something like, hey, checking personal emails during your lunch break, totally fine. But downloading the entire Game of Thrones series using the company Wi-Fi, probably not a good idea.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Set those boundaries.
Exactly. And I think it's really important to, explain why those rules exist. Like, why are we doing this? How does it benefit everyone?
Yeah, I agree. Don't just tell people what to do, but explain the reasoning behind it.
Exactly. Like, you could explain how protecting sensitive data helps to safeguard both the company's reputation and the employee's personal information.
It's like a win-win for everyone involved. Now, social media, that's a big one, right? How do you address that in an AUP?
Oh, yeah. Social media can definitely be a tricky one. I think a good AUP, it should address how employees can, use social media during work hours. So, maybe it's okay to scroll through your personal feed during a break, but definitely not okay to be posting confidential company information or ranting about your boss on Twitter.
Yeah, that's probably a good rule of thumb. Keep those thoughts to yourself. What about using company logos and trademarks? I feel like I've seen some pretty questionable stuff out there.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. I once saw somebody selling T-shirts with, a slightly altered version of a famous company's logo.
Oh.
Not cool.
Not cool at all. So how do you address that in the AUP?
Well, I think it's really important to make it crystal clear how employees can and cannot use those company logos and trademarks. Maybe they can use, official pre-approved logos and marketing materials, but creating their own versions or using them for personal projects. Big no-no.
Okay, so we've covered internet use, social media, logos, trademarks. What about the more technical stuff, data security, password management, all that good stuff?
Right. So when it comes to data security, an AUP should have some really clear procedures for handling sensitive information, like customer data, financial records, anything like that.
Right. Keep that stuff under lock and key.
Exactly. And it might require employees to use strong, unique passwords. Please, let's retire password 123.
Oh, yeah. No more weak passwords.
Right. And no writing them down on sticky notes under your keyboard either.
No comment.
Fair enough. But the point is, we need to take data security seriously. And the policy should also explain, how to report security breaches or suspected data leaks.
So it's not just about preventing those things from happening. It's also about knowing what to do if they do happen, right?
Right. It's like having a fire drill for the digital world.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered strong passwords, data security. What about remote work? That's the elephant in the room these days.
Yeah, for sure. With so many people working from home, it's, absolutely crucial to have some guidelines for accessing company systems remotely. So the AUP should specify, which devices and networks are authorized for remote access. Maybe it even requires employees to use a VPN, to encrypt their connection and protect their data.
Okay, yeah. A VPN creates a secure tunnel for all that information to travel through, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the point is the same rules apply, whether you're working from, a cubicle in the office, a coffee shop, or a beach in Bali.
Right. So we've talked about a lot of rules here, and I know it might sound kind of overwhelming, but it's not about, making people's lives harder. Right?
No, not at all. It's about creating a culture of awareness, responsibility, right? And that benefits everyone.
Okay, so speaking of responsibility, what happens when somebody breaks the rules? What are the consequences for violating an AUP? And I'm not talking about accidentally hitting reply all on an email. I mean the serious stuff.
Right. So, An AUP needs to clearly spell out what those consequences are. And, those consequences should be proportionate to the severity of the offense.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
So for like a minor infraction, like forgetting to log out of a shared computer, maybe a verbal warning is enough. But for more serious violations, like accessing inappropriate websites or sharing confidential information, well, the consequences could be much more serious.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like it could be disciplinary action, suspension, or even termination. It's all about drawing that line in the sand, making it clear that these actions have serious consequences.
Okay, so we've established the consequences, but how do you make sure that employees actually understand and follow the AUP in the first place? Like, it's one thing to have a policy, it's another thing to make sure people actually, read it and understand it.
That's where employee education and training come in. You can't just hand someone a copy of the AUP and expect them to magically become a cybersecurity expert.
Right. So how do you make that training more engaging, more effective?
Well, for starters, regular training sessions are a must. Whether it's in person or online, these sessions can cover the key points of the AUP, give some real-world examples, answer any questions that people might have.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And honestly, who doesn't love a good quiz or an interactive game? It makes it more fun.
I'm all about gamifying learning. Make it fun, make it memorable.
Exactly. And don't forget about ongoing communication. Send out periodic reminders about the AUP, share relevant news articles, maybe create a dedicated intranet page where employees can ask questions and share best practices.
So it's not just a one-time thing, it's about creating a culture of cybersecurity awareness, right?
Exactly. And, the most effective AUPs, they're actually developed in collaboration with employees. So when people feel like they have a voice in the process, they're much more likely to embrace the policy.
Right. It's about ownership, shared responsibility.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we wrap up this part, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the legal side of AUPs. I know it's not the most glamorous topic, but it's super important.
Oh, yeah, the legal stuff is definitely crucial.
So why should companies care about the legal implications of their AUPs? I mean, it's not like they're going to be arguing these cases in court themselves, right? Well, they might not be arguing the cases in court themselves, but they definitely don't want to end up, on the losing side of a lawsuit, right?
Exactly. A well-written AUP, it can be a company's best friend in legal situations.
Yeah.
It's like having a shield, to protect them from all those legal arrows.
Okay, I like that analogy, a legal shield. So how does an AUP actually protect a company in the eyes of the law?
Well, let's talk about liability for a second. So if an employee, goes rogue and uses company resources for something illegal, spreading malware or harassing coworkers online, a solid AUP can really help to limit the company's liability.
So it's like saying, hey, we told you not to do this. We have it in writing. Don't blame us.
Exactly. It shows that the company, they took steps to prevent that behavior.
Yeah.
And if there is a legal dispute, that AUP, it can actually be used as evidence to support the company's position.
Okay, so it's all about having that documentation, that proof that the company did what it was supposed to do.
Right. But it's not just about liability. An AUP can also be a powerful tool for protecting the company's intellectual property. All those great ideas, designs, secret formulas, all that stuff.
Right, yeah, all the secret sauce.
Exactly. The AUP makes it clear that anything created by employees while they're working for the company, well, belongs to the company, not to the individual.
Makes sense. You can't just walk away with the company's, creative treasures.
Exactly. Now, we also have to consider all those laws and regulations out there, especially when it comes to data privacy.
Oh, yeah, data privacy. That's a huge topic these days.
It is. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And an AUP needs to be in tip-top shape to comply with all those regulations, like GDPR, CCPA, all those acronyms.
Right, all those rules about how companies can collect and use personal information.
Exactly. So, for example, if a company handles sensitive customer data, the AUP needs to be very clear about how that data is handled. It needs to make sure that everything is being done in accordance with those data privacy laws.
Okay, so it sounds like an AUP is way more than just a boring document. It's like this important tool that can protect a company. But, technology moves so fast. How do you keep an AUP from becoming outdated?
That's a great question. And honestly, the key is to be proactive. Review your AUP at least once a year, maybe even more often, depending on your industry. And when you're doing that review, don't be afraid to, get input from different departments, IT, legal, HR, even employees themselves. They can all provide valuable insights.
So it's like having a team of experts all working together to make sure the policy is the best it can be.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just technology that changes. Company culture changes, values change. The AUP needs to reflect those changes too.
Right. It needs to stay relevant.
Exactly.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of acceptable use policies, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that a strong AUP, it's essential. It's the foundation for a secure, productive, and, legally sound digital environment.
It's not about being restrictive. It's about empowering employees to use technology safely and responsibly, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about common mistakes, essential ingredients, the legal implications, and of course, the importance of keeping those policies up to date.
And most importantly, we talked about how a well-crafted AUP can actually empower employees and create a more positive and secure digital environment for everyone.
Exactly. So thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope you learned something new and that you'll join us again for our next deep dive. Until then, stay safe and stay secure out there.
See you next time.